Hi, Lori. I just wanted to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to record a video from home. So I'm going to start now. In my first practicum, I was able to practice read aloud quite a bit with the grade 1 class as their pre-service teacher. I would discuss the choice of the book I would be reading the day before and work collaboratively with my CT, cooperating teacher, and the librarian to find a book that would flow with the book from the prior day, adhering to the lesson being taught that day, or a book that coincided with the month, season, or for the upcoming curriculum outcomes or indicators. And one they can identify with. That's also something, something that's relevant to them will make them want to listen to the book or read the book more. And even better for understanding the material. Let me see. As someone who understands material much more thoroughly when text is read aloud to them, that's definitely me. I comprehend why conducting read-alouds holds such a significance for students. Students have the pressure of expected reading lifted off their shoulders when teachers read and the class listens. We would conduct read-alouds either in our morning routine or after recess, which also calms them down after the excitement of outdoor play. And begins to focus them into the direction of the new lesson. To change things up, I played a read-aloud book for the class to listen to and to watch. And the reason why I chose that was so that people could hear it orally, as well as have something visual to look at. Let's see. It is important to remind the class of the read aloud rules and also include them in include them in making the rules. Then when you ask them about that, they will be more apt to want to follow the rules if they made them as well. Let me see. You can ask the class, can anyone tell me what they're learning from this reading by raising their hands. We're not doing popcorn answers right now. If you plan to have writing time in their journals after the read aloud, let them know ahead of time so that they do know they need to pay attention. Let me see. My cooperating teacher taught me to make sure, for the students, make sure you have an idea before you start writing. That was a key component to make sure to remind them of, because like you said in class, I don't know a topic. I don't know what to write about. Let me see. It's one of the ways of knowing how to write. And she had that on an anchor chart, which is always put a capital at the beginning of a sentence, use your fingers as spacing during writing sentences, and always, use punctuation at the end of the sentence. For shared reading, it's an opportunity to share reading strategies in the construction of meaning with your students. Before guided reading groups take place, read aloud and shared reading would occur. That way, learning to read goes from the teacher reading to the teacher and students reading, and students reading in small groups of guided reading, which then the baton is passed from the teacher to the students reading independently. And then we move on to guided reading, which focuses the students' attention to strategies. It is used in small groups and for students who need more help to become independent readers. It engages learners in discussion and is a place for questions to take place, which helps teachers see where to go next and where the student needs help specifically. Let me see. As my cooperating teacher would conduct a guided reading group, the rest of the class, what she called it was their bags of books. These were actual level reading books, not just of their choice, any type. Like we discussed in class, you taught us that a level book is usually one that they know 90% of it, but another 10% that is sort of challenging for them so that their knowledge can grow. Their ability to read and learn to read is growing. Let me see. And then when the guided reading group was close to being finished, the class was instructed to put their bags of books back in their book bags to take home and practice. Then they could get in their pre-assigned book buddies, groups of 2 that the cooperating teacher had already set up because she knows which children got along and which ones would play and just be silly. They were instructed to find a quiet place, sitting in the classroom, reading quietly, taking turns with one another. My job as the pre-service teacher was to observe the students during independent and peer reading buddies to maintain good class management and listen to see if they were reading and taking turns reading. My cooperating teacher and I would switch places, and I led the guided reading group, and for one of my lesson plans, I needed to take notes of any mistakes or if anyone needed my prompting or help with their reading. It wasn't quite a running record, but now, learning it in your class and practicing it, I'll be able to use that in the future for my next practicum. Before reading anything, the students would do a book walk where they went through every page of the book, just looking at the pictures. This helped them to visualize what the book was going to be about, and before they actually read it. And I find a lot of students in the grade 1 class, that was something that they really needed to do, just to give them an idea. It wasn't really like, giving them like a cheat sheet or anything. It just prepared their minds for what was coming so that they would be able to read what was on the pages. Now going into my second practicum, like I was saying, I'm feeling confident after having practiced running records in your class that I can do them with my grade 1 class. Having their skills, or this skill gives me the ability to gather students' strengths and weaknesses and also practice my summative assessment skills by calculating their oral reading accuracy percentages. When I met with my CT for coffee over Thanksgiving weekend, she was impressed to hear that we had been practicing running records at St. FX. And when I met with Joanne Landry, who was a professor of mine during the distance program, she was impressed to hear that we were practicing running records, because she said she was the one who mentioned to you that as pre-service teachers, we need to implement running records. We need to learn about them and be able to do them. Otherwise, when we go out into the field and actually work, we'll have to learn there. So, good job. Good job, Lori. She was proud of you, as am I. Let's see. Selecting texts. What I find about those, kids back home come from lobster fisherman families. They go hunting, they go four-wheeling, they go camping and finding engaging texts that would interest them. It was of utmost importance because the content would be relevant to them. Independent reading. Students get to pick their texts, show teachers what they're interested in, and show kids that reading is valuable. Their interest is reading and being engaged while reading shows their motivation to learn. In one of the ELA learning centers, which we did daily in my first practicum, I incorporated the idea of having one group go to a table where they put on headphones and listened to the story being read to them while they followed along in the book. This allowed for students who learn orally to have the book read aloud to them, which was very helpful for a lot of the students who had behavior issues in the classroom, I find, because they could actually engage better. They had the book in front of them, they had the visual, but they also had the oral in their ears, so they didn't have to read it, and they tended to come away from that knowing the material better. Reading, processing, strategies, and perspectives. There's bottom up, there's top down, interactive, and social constructivist. So bottom up is basically trying to understand language by looking at meanings of basic units of text. Examples of that are sounds for listening and words for reading, because language isn't just about reading. It's reading, listening, writing. It's a lot of things. Let me see. It's bottom up is like a processing of sensory information as it's coming in, whereas top down is reading with purpose. It's a higher order of thinking, making sense of text through strategies, asking what they know about the subject of text, aka prior knowledge that they have coming into it. Taking what they know and applying it to the new text so that their prior knowledge helps them understand the new learning of the reading. This way, where bottom up is processing sensory information as it's coming in, top down is more so a perception driven by cognition, where interactive is hands-on, the real world approach as a teacher. It's a holistic approach to learning, actively involving students in their reading process, the use of audio visuals, and hands-on demonstrations. And social constructivist is shared interactions with their culture and society. Knowledge develops as a result of social and shared experience and interaction language use. So, making some connections. Shared reading, they're great examples of interactive processing perspectives because they start by the teacher doing the reading to sharing the reading with your students. The students being able to read along aloud gives all students the ability to take part and allows for visual and oral learning to progress in their reading comprehension. Whereas read aloud is more like a top-down perspective. It's expecting students to think and be able to make connections with something they already know, and combining that with new text provides their seeds of knowledge with the sun to their water, and their reading skills bloom, grow bigger, better, and stronger. Bottom up is definitely guided reading. It's an example of that because they are not getting the nutrients they need to process the ability to read. So therefore, having the teacher there to help them find what strategies will produce a healthy and successful mindset for reading, it's a backwards way of figuring out what vitamins, as you will, they are lacking to read the way that works best for them. A couple other things. When I was younger, I think it was grade 3 or 4, I remember asking a student who was sitting in front of me, I couldn't figure it out. How do you spell the word R? She laughed. She didn't understand why I didn't know how to spell that word. So I was pretty embarrassed by that. And then I think it was grade 4, I was not comprehending the material I was reading. So my dad said to me, you know what? Record what you need to read, and then you can listen to it over and over and over again until you get it. And I did that, and it worked for me. So I was definitely an oral reader, but I'm also visual and hands-on as well. But I can do the reading and writing as well too. Let me see. Oh yeah. I find, like, when I was doing the guided reading group, one of the students was a Syrian refugee who came to live in Shelburne, and he was an ESL student, English as a second language. One had missed a lot of school. She was at the reading level of the majority of her class, and because she had missed so much school, her absence caused her reading level to drop. It's also important, like, when you're in the guided reading group, to ask reflective questions and open-ended questions. Like, why do you think this happened? We would read fiction and nonfiction books. We also use the big books because the kids could point to the words as I was reading them, or they would read a sentence, or if there was the same sentence at the end of every page, like a rhyming kind of cue, they would all say it. They kind of got used to saying it each time together as a class, which I really liked. It helps them remember it. Let me see. Oh, when my parents would read to me at night, they didn't read from a book. They read from their imagination. And I find when I go over and I'm hanging out with a friend from class, her daughter, I will say to her, "Oh, look up at the ceiling. I'm in the sky. Can you see all the stars up there?" And I make her believe in using her imagination to be able to understand the reading that I'm doing from my mind. And it causes her to read or just tell stories from her imagination as well. The only other thing, I think, the pedagogies that we use as teachers support the ways we teach. It's some examples of that would be word walls, word sorting, word parts, different things like that. The question and answer relationship, the think alouds, stuff like that. Those help you to teach children and students how to read, how to write, and the combination of those things helps the overall process of English language arts. Thank you, and I know this is way longer than a 2 or 3 minute video, but I thank you for listening, and have a great night and a great weekend.